All right, I'm seeing people still trickling in, but I'll go ahead and start with our housekeeping items. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Kirsten Baer with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. Thank you for joining today's Workforce Wednesday webinar, where we will be talking about the draft MOU guidance for program year 2026. We are joined by KEB TA, Technical Assistance Team, Benton McCarthy, and Tanya Fry. So we are thankful that they are presenting today this information. You are on the Zoom webinar platform, so you do have the capability as an attendee to participate in the chat for any questions or comments or concerns. And you can also type in the Q&A function on the Zoom toolbar any questions as well, and we will facilitate those at the end of the session once Benton is done with the information portion. You do not have the capability to turn on your microphone or your camera, and that is intentional. So please make sure you utilize the chat and the Q&A for that collaboration and communication during today's webinar. This webinar is being recorded and it will be posted on Illinois WorkNet as well as the Illinois Workforce Academy website, which is the website that our center at Illinois State University controls. And we will have that URL sent out to you in a follow-up email tomorrow, along with a follow-up survey too. That's short questions, so we appreciate your feedback on that. And we will have the slide deck and the recording linked on both of those websites for you to refer back to this information if you need to. We also have closed captioning on today for accessibility reasons or note-taking purposes, so feel free to turn that on. And then I'll start us off with our just standard Workforce Wednesday webinar polls. The first one is, which partner do you best represent? And then if you scroll down, it's also, where is your local area? So both of those polls are launched now and you should be able to participate in them. We'll give everyone about a minute-ish to answer those. Just waiting for a couple more people to answer. Okay. All right, so it looks like we have quite a few people from Title 1 and 3 joining us, and we have sprinkled across the rest of the state as well. And then we have sprinkled across the state for the local area, Chicago and Northern and Central and Southern. So nice to see a good span across the state. And then one more poll that we would like you to answer. It's actually a short answer question. And we just would like to know, which LWIA are you from today? So if you could go ahead and just type in your LWIA into that short answer. All right. I will go ahead and Damar, I see that you typed in the chat, and that's fine too, but you should be able to see that short answer text box where you can type. But I'll go ahead and end that poll as well. And thank you for participating in that. We'll have that report sent to KEB. And then I will hand it off to Benton to start the presentation.
Awesome. Thanks, Kirsten. Welcome, everyone, to the PY26 Draft Guidance webinar. My name is Benton McCarthy, and I'm a consultant with KEB. We help facilitate implementation of WIOA activities throughout the state. And presenting with me today, I'm sure most of you know, is Tanya Fry, but I'll still have her do a quick introduction.
Hi, everyone. Benton pretty much gave the overview of what we do here at KEB, but I am Tanya Fry, and I'm happy to be here and help present this draft guidance for your program year 26.
Perfect. So today we're going to be presenting on behalf of the WIOA Interagency Technical Assistance Team that assists in several phases of the MOU process. Our goal is to obtain your feedback on proposed guidance for MOUs, and we'll use your feedback from today, and we'll also ask for feedback throughout the rest of the month. So basically by December 1st, if you think of anything, let us know. And then we're going to use all of that feedback to improve and finalize the program year 2026 MOU guidance. So Tanya's going to start today's presentation with some reminders related to MOU and budget negotiations. I'm going to present the draft MOU guidance specific to program year 2026. And then, and just a reminder, this is the first year, or PY26 will be the first year of a new 3-year MOU cycle. And then Tanya is going to discuss the timeline of activities related to the program year 2026 MOUs. And as we typically do, we'll pause after each section and allow for questions. You can also use the chat box to type questions in throughout the presentation. And we're going to do our best to answer everything that we can today, but anything that we can't answer, we will look into and then upload those responses to the FAQ document, which is on the WIOA implementation page. So yeah, I'll hand it off to Tanya to discuss some MOU and budget negotiation reminders for program year 2026.
Thanks, Benton. So just as an overview, the MOU that serves as a tool to achieve integration and reflect any shared vision and commitment between service providers, programs, one-stop operators, and those leaseholders, stakeholders, and local workforce innovation board. In addition to the MOU, it serves as a backbone of how partners will negotiate in good faith and commit how they will deliver those services to the customers. So as Benton mentioned, the MOU itself is negotiated once every 3 years. However, the shared costs that are negotiated, which is going to be for that budget piece, that's negotiated annually. And other aspects in the MOU may change based on that MOU guidance, which is what we're going to be going through today, or changes to any service provider committed FTE levels and changes to the one-stop operator or leaseholders. You can go ahead and go to the next screen. So here is the list of how this program 26 typically runs. So MOU negotiations will start in January. Those negotiations will go from January all the way through May 31st. And May 31st is when that full MOU budget and signatures for everything from the negotiation is due to the state. The program year 26 MOU takes effect July 1st of 2026. And we always want to remind everyone how that state fiscal year sometimes is a little bit off. So the state fiscal year is going to go July 26th to June 30th of 27. So sometimes there's a little overlap there. But that PY26 marks again that first year of the 3-year term. And there will be a new budget and template that's put out on the WIOA implementation page for everyone to pull down. So the annual amendments are required to be updated, the MOU budget and partner commitment. So that's going to be your FTEs, service delivery, and any cost sharing. And oh, thanks, Ben. You already switched those slides. So these are the decisions that are typically reflected within the MOU. That's going to be services that can be assessed in the local one-stop delivery system. So this is where you're going to decide, what services are going to be at the one-stop and what services may be direct linkage, the locations where those are going to be made available. So, are they going to be right inside that one stop, or is it going to be online, or are they going to, or is there going to be a phone number that participants may need to call? So, each program partner's method of delivering those services, they're going to discuss that at the negotiations and make sure that how they plan to help and put forth their piece to that one stop is discussed and added as a description inside that MOU. You will also talk about the roles of the one-stop operator, what they're specifically going to do, and how they're bringing all of that together. And then again, those coordination of referrals, so referring from one program to another program. Those commitments to share in the infrastructure costs and the local service delivery costs, how those contributions are going to be made, whether that's going to be made through cash or that may be made through in-kind service delivery. Whichever that is, those are all the things that are going to be brought to the table during those MOU discussions and negotiations. All right, Benton, I'll hand it back over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Tanya. So I'm going to pause real quick. I know those were just kind of some reminders, but does anybody have any questions so far before we dive into the actual draft guidance? Okay, well then we'll go ahead and keep it going. So this next portion is the actual draft guidance. So there are 7 sections to the draft MOU guidance: MOU template, MOU narrative, direct linkage checklist, budget spreadsheet, best practices, final MOU submittal date, and MOU signature pages. So you should have received a copy of the drafted guidance already. If anyone has not received that guidance, reach out to Tanya or I, put it in the chat, or email us afterwards, and we can get you that draft guidance document. So there were no new items added to the MOU template for PY26. There was one item removed from section 18 of the template. So you'll want to make sure that you download the most recent version from the WIOA resource page to utilize that before you begin completing each section. And then I just want to point out that I'm actually kind of in the process right now of going through the WIOA implementation page. So currently everything is still PY25, but here in the next couple weeks, you're going to see that everything is updated with the most current documents and forms. So although there are no new requirements that were added to the MOU template, we included MOU narrative assistance specifically to the sections that consistently needed additional information across most local areas. As we review these sections throughout the webinar, we'll provide some assistance with what is required in the narrative. So this first section that we'll discuss is within section 7, which is the description of the comprehensive one-stop centers or the one-stop services. The screenshot on the slide shows the 2 requirements that we want to focus on for program year 26. There's more requirements in section 7, but these are kind of the 2 that we want to focus on with the guidance. So the first bullet point is where a bulk of the revisions will typically come from. The requirements needed for every partner and program is the method they are using to deliver services, which can be on-site, direct linkage, cross-training. And then if it is direct linkage, the method used for delivering direct linkage a sentence is needed within that write-up for your program, basically saying how direct linkage is being provided. So whether it's by phone with voicemail or by phone, email, and Zoom, whatever your method for delivering those services via direct linkage, that needs to be out there in section 7 and within each program. So then bullet point 2, it doesn't get as many revisions as that first bullet point, but it is one that is missed occasionally. So the description of how the services are provided during business hours is the requirement there. So an example of this could simply be these services are available Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. It doesn't have to go into crazy detail. It can, but simply just stating the days and the times that those services will be available is the requirement that is needed. So the second section that we'll cover is in section 10, procurement of the one-stop operator. The required elements are shown here on the screenshot on the slide. Compared to section 7, there were significantly fewer revisions, but we still wanted to highlight section 10. As for most of the bullet points in this section, they have multiple components. And sometimes certain components are included, but others might be overlooked. So we'll just kind of go through these requirements in section 10. So with bullet point 1, essentially it wants you to name the one-stop operator and if there will be a single entity or consortium. So typically everyone's going to put who the one-stop operator is, but they might not actually mention, is it a consortium or a single entity? And then if it is a consortium, to list out who all the partners are that are included in that consortium. Those are all separate components that are required for that first bullet point. Bullet point 2, it's asking for the functions and the scope of the one-stop operator. Bullet point 3 focuses on the description of the payment provision. So within this description, it needs to include the term, frequency, and method of payment. We've seen that sometimes 2 of those 3 items might be included, but maybe not the frequency, maybe just the term and the payment method, but not how often those payments are getting made. So just make sure that all 3 components are included when you're completing that bullet point. And then the fourth bullet point requires that both the total cost of the one-stop operator and the required partners that are contributing to the cost. Again, it's easy to answer one and not the other, but just making sure that you get both of those. And then bullet point 5 refers to the method of contribution for the one-stop operator. This one is just one component, but just making sure that you're listing if it's cash, non-cash, or in kind. So with attachment H, the cover page for submittal, the cover page this year should not be included with the MOU narrative for program year 26. The MOU cover page will be completed and included with the MOU narrative for the second and the third years of the MOU cycle. So that would be PY 27 and PY 28. The purpose of the cover page is to essentially highlight what is revised from the previous program year MOU. And since this is the start of a new 3-year cycle, that cover page isn't necessary. So that is one less thing for PY 26 that will need to be submitted into the state. So the next section is around the direct linkage checklist. So there has been a change to this. I know the last 2 years, this has been a requirement to be turned in with all the other MOU documentation that gets submitted to the state. But for PY 26, we're going to revert back to how it was from PY 23 and earlier, where that direct linkage checklist still needs to be completed, but it only needs to be submitted to your local MOU negotiator. That's how it always was in the past, but the last 2 years, it was also required to be turned in. Um, so still make sure that that direct linkage checklist is getting completed if your program is providing services via direct linkage. But for those local negotiators or whoever's submitting all the documentation to the state, that does not need to be included for PY 26. So the next section is with the budget spreadsheet. And for program year 2026, no new items were added to the budget spreadsheet template. So instead, these next slides are going to just highlight key areas to pay close attention to, especially those where we've seen a lot of compliance issues in the past. So this guidance should help ensure that the budget spreadsheets are getting completed accurately and consistently. So this left screenshot shows the one-stop operator tab within the budget that would need updated anytime a contract changes. Every LWIA is different. Some may change this annually, some may be 3 years. So whatever that term is, you still want to make sure that this gets updated every year when you're completing this budget. So you can see here that the OSO contract is July 1, 22 to June 30, 2026. So this would actually not be in compliance because program year 2026 starts July 1 and goes through June 30 of 2027. So that OSO contract end date would really need to go through the program year. So that's just one thing to always make sure that you're keeping an eye out for. And you can kind of see, I know it's a little small, but the D2 OSO cost center one tab, that's where that's located. So then the right screenshot shows where the partner responsible for payment, also known as the payee, is listed. Although each partner pays their fair share, the payee still needs to be listed anytime an amount is listed within that budget spreadsheet. So as you're completing the budget spreadsheet, make sure that you confirm you're looking through each row that has an amount and confirm that the payee is listed in the cell next to it. So you can see this one, we just put IDES is responsible for each of those items in the shared infrastructure section, but that's got to go down all the way through shared delivery. And then on if there's any board related costs on the all centers tab, you'd want to make sure that those payees are listed as well. And really this has gotten a lot better, at least since I've kind of been involved with looking through these items. I would say the one area that would probably get missed more is making sure that you go to that total cost center tab and list who's paying for the board functions. Typically everything with infrastructure and delivery, that payee has been listed, but just making sure that, yeah, you see an amount, there needs to be a payee included. So this screenshot comes from the D shared cost center one tab of the budget spreadsheet. And in cell B76, local areas must choose their accurate one-stop operator model, which is either going to be single entity or consortium. So this was included with the guidance as some local areas just forgot to select this. Or another thing that we'd seen from a couple of areas, what's listed in the MOU narrative might not match what's in the budget spreadsheet. So maybe from previous years, something had changed, went from single entity to consortium, and you updated it in maybe the narrative, but forgot to update it in the budget or vice versa. So just making sure that that's selected and then also that it matches what's listed in the MOU narrative. So this next screenshot comes from the D Share Cost Center 1 tab as well. what we often see uh, is that local areas put all service delivery costs in rows 84 through 86, and then leave rows 89 through 91 blank. But those rows are specifically for the one-stop operator contributions, and they need to be broken out separately. So in other words, amounts should appear in both sections. So rows 89 through 91 need to have the OSO contribution amounts, and then rows 84 through 86 need to have the rest of the service delivery contributions. So the example shown on this slide accurately breaks down the service delivery contribution in both places. And in the past, this is always if everything was listed in 84 through 86, this has been let go and no revisions were sent out for that. But this is something that is going to be looked at closer moving forward to make sure that the one-stop operator amounts are accurately broken out and listed in rows 89 through 91. So this is another new item for the PY26 that was included in the draft guidance. So then this screenshot is also from that D shared cost center 1 tab of the budget spreadsheet. And this shows where the one-stop operator details need to be listed. And again, the main thing with this is definitely put in all the details around the one-stop operator and how those are going to be paid. But we more wanted to highlight that, like we've said with other sections, what's listed here in the budget has to match what's in the MOU narrative. So we've seen from time to time that this section might be blank, which would result in a revision because that needs to be broken down here in the budget as well. But we've also seen that sometimes the MOU narrative might have different amounts, whether it's the MOU has the accurate amounts and the budget spreadsheet didn't get updated from the next year. Whatever that is, there might be different amounts listed or different older information included in this section. So just again, make sure that what's listed in the MOU narrative around the one-stop operator matches this section in the budget. So this slide shows the variance table, which is included in section 13 of the MOU narrative, but really you're going to gather all of the data that you need to fill this table out from the budget spreadsheet. So the variance table should only list the total cash contributions for each partner in the total cash contribution column, which is this column over here, column 1. The total cash amounts can be found at the bottom of the budget in the total shared cost all centers tab. So typically when there's a revision within the variance table, it's due to just the total amount getting paid by a partner listed in there rather than just the cash amount. So if there's any non-cash or in-kind, those amounts should not be included within this variance table. It's only the cash. And then, so if that first row is off because it's got an incorrect amount, obviously then the rest of the rows are going to be off with the 10% and then the total plus 10%. So just making sure that you know or you're pulling from the correct row within that budget spreadsheet that has all the cash listed. So this next section is around best practices, and this is something that the interagency team wanted to add to include just a couple of best practices for PY26. The first one is with clear documentation of the contributions. So ensure that all in-kind and non-cash contributions are fully negotiated, documented, and agreed upon by all partners for transparency and audit readiness. And then the other best practice is with submitting the MOU narrative. So just to share that MOU narrative in Word with track changes enabled. That way it'll streamline partner feedback, and then it'll also help expedite fiscal and legal reviews. So when those legal departments and fiscal departments are reviewing to see what changes were made, whenever those track changes are included, it makes it a lot easier for them to see what's been the same from last year, and then yeah, what's changed for the current year. So the next couple sections, the final MOU submittal due date will be May 29th, 2026. I think the 31st falls on a weekend, so the 29th is that Friday. And then this next slide, we're going to talk about a little bit more with the MOU signature guidance. So the MOU signature page has not changed from program year 25. If you choose to use the electronic signature option, you will need to follow the steps required by the comptroller. If you've completed those steps, then all you have to do is just put your electronic signature on there, and then mark that affirmation box saying that you've followed those steps. As we say every year, the wet signature is still the preferred method. When completing the signature page, you also want to make sure to not use abbreviations, as the comptroller's office will not accept any signature pages that have abbreviations listed in the title or the organization fields. I know it's pretty easy to just like write CFO or CEO, but that really needs spelled out for the title. So, and then finally, the date needs to be a current date, not a previous a date from the previous program year. It needs to be a current date showing that they've read through the PY 26 MOU and budget, and they approve of everything in there. So just making sure that that date is included, but also a current date. So I know that was quite a bit of information. A lot of it was similar, the same from previous years. There was some new guidance specific for PY 26. We'll pause here, and I'm sure there's probably a few questions, or if everyone wants to wait till the end, that's fine too. But I'll pause here and see if anyone has any questions over what was just covered.
Benton, Rena had a question. She was asking if you could explain FTEs a bit more, what it is and how it's calculated.
Yeah, like in terms of like how it's like in the budget, matching what's in the MOU, and like how it's used to determine payment, or I don't know if Rena, if you want to unmute just to clarify.
Her example was 0.25 FTE represents how many hours, etc.
Okay, so yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that that FTE amount, well, first off, as you know, that's how much they're contributing. One FTE, one full-time equivalent, like one would be a full-time person, 40 hours a week, in whether they're on site in the center, or if they're not on site, they're still providing that equivalent amount throughout each week. So then the amount of work that they're doing, that's kind of what determines that that FTE, and then you're throwing that into the budget, and then that kind of determines the amount that each program is going to ultimately owe their fair share. So if Title I typically is going to have the most FTEs at each location, you can see from the budget that, okay, if this center has 10 Title I FTEs, they're going to say that makes up 50% of the overall FTEs at a certain LWIA, then they're going to be responsible for 50% of those costs for that program year. And then if you say like CSEP, for example, if they're 0.25, they're going to make up a much smaller percentage. So whatever that amount would be into 20 FTEs, that's going to result in a much smaller amount. And then take your say Title III, Wagner Pizer, if they're like 2 FTEs into that, they're going to be a different percentage. So each program is going to have their specific FTE amount that they're able to contribute each program year. And then that's what goes into the budget spreadsheet. And then as all those costs with the lease and the other infrastructure costs, security, all that kind of stuff, and then service delivery, all of that, all of those costs go into the budget. And then at the end, if that local area has board costs, all of those amounts are thrown into the budget along with the full-time equivalents from each program. And that's what shows the breakdown of costs per partner. So that's why you can see that typically Title I is going to have the most, and then Title III usually is also has more FTEs. But then a lot of the partners, as you've seen as you're looking through those budgets, typically provide just like a 0.25 or a 0.5. So and then I saw here, I just turned the chat on. I saw Steve Martin said that the lowest FTE amount allowed is 0.25. That would be correct unless a waiver was submitted and approved by the WIOA Interagency Technical Assistance Team. A 0.25 in the governor's guidelines is listed as the minimum that is a partner can provide for that program year, unless, like I said, that local area provides a waiver with a description as to why a certain program might need to be less than 0.25. There's not many, but there is a few local areas throughout the state that might have a 0.125, so like half of a 0.25 FTE. But again, all of those waivers are reviewed by the WIOA Interagency Technical Assistance Team, and then a determination is made to either approve or deny that waiver. Tanya, I don't know if you want to say any more around FTEs. I know I just probably said quite a bit, but I'll let you jump in as well.
Thanks, Benton. I'll just give a little bit of a simplified response as well as I can, because there's an additional question about, a conversion chart for FTEs. So there's 14 required partners that are required to be within a one-stop within that area. And then, of course, you have some others that if they're in the area, then they would be required. So that being said, of those 14 required partners, those programs are some are larger than others, some are smaller than others. So in a basic way to explain an FTE, so Illinois, based off the governor's guidelines, has stated that the FTE is the easiest and best practice for dividing out the fair share for each one of those 14 partners, or additional partners if they wanted to, if they were in that area. So if out of those 14 partners, the size of your grant, the size of your program, and the ability that you're able to help, or how many people you have in that area that's available to help, is where you as a program would determine, as program and partner determine, this is what we can contribute to this local area. And then that if that was 0.25, that 0.25 FTE would then be put into the budget, and that would be your fair share. For your hours that are going to be used for that one stop, that's for you to discuss in those negotiation meetings and with all the partners. That says, okay, so out of 40 hours, I can give a quarter of a staff member that's going to be available, that could be available for 1 hour, 5 days a week, or could be available for a half day and 1 day a week for on site, or for direct linkage, that decision is based off you for your program and for your part and as the partner, and then to negotiate that during the negotiations. I hope that clarified a little bit more. But that's what I had, Benton. And I can
Yeah,
go ahead and ask these questions that are in the chat to you if you wanted. I'll ask them if you wanted to go ahead and answer them. That way we
I
can
kind
keep
of
them in
started looking
order.
through these as you were giving that answer. So I think Steve and Pilar, they both asked when um, the new documents will be on the WIOA resource page. My plan would be by the end of this week, but it might go into next week. We work with an individual from the state, and I actually got his out of office today, just confirming that he was still the point person that makes those changes. So we've got a lot of the documentation ready to get uploaded. It's just going to be a matter of working with that individual to make those changes. So hopefully by the end of this week, or maybe next week. And then Pilar, I'll make sure to send you the resource page via email. But actually, I think it's on our next slide that we're going to be going through. So you can also just kind of like copy it or screenshot it. But we do have the link to that page on the next slide. I think Caroline actually answered one of the questions that we had out here for the reasoning why we would need um, the track changes for the first year. And I know um, the initial submitting the MOU to the state, you're right, it wouldn't really have any track changes because it would be the first time submitted of the beginning of the cycle. But whenever those revision letters go out, like this year, I believe they went out the end of August. Basically, here's the 2 or 3 things that need updated. That's when you would start enabling those track changes to show, okay, we've made these updates. Or throughout the process, I'm sure a lot of you that are on the call have maybe had UMOS join their local area late after the initial MOUs were turned in. So anytime an amendment is needed made, whether it's from the revision letters, a new partner joining, or whatever that reason would be, that's when you would want to make sure to include those track or have track changes selected. So that way, when you're sending those on to your partners and those partners are reviewing them and their legal teams or fiscal teams or whoever's reviewing them, they can easily see those changes. So that's why it's going to just help expedite the process. So, and then on top of that, since we're on the topic of it, still when you go to submit the documents into the state likes to obtain a track change version, but then also a clean version. And essentially, all you have to do there is just have your track change version, save that copy, and then accept all the changes and save that as a separate copy and just call the one clean version and call the other one track change version. But that's what gets submitted into the state after all those revisions are made from the revision letters or again, if any other amendment has to take place. And then I thought there was maybe one other one.
Ben, can you touch on the concern about the template not being the most user-friendly for word track changes?
Um, yeah, I mean,
I mean,
if I'm,
I don't know if
if,
maybe we could get some additional information on that. I don't know if
yeah,
you've heard that from other areas.
I'll just speak from my own personal experience using track changes. I agree, it can get a little confusing, and I know it throws the formatting um, off, and it is tough sometimes to plug notes in when you've got a lot of font like with the strike through. So you can. I know it's not like oh, this is going to be the greatest fix ever. But you can, when you're making those changes, you can have the track changes on, but you can like you can mess with the settings within Word to still track all the changes, but to show you or to display a clean version of it still. That way you can kind of see how you want the form to look like, but then at the end, still just make sure that those track changes are being shown and displayed so all those partners and everyone can see them. But yeah, I mean, in terms of other areas reaching out regarding the track changes being not user friendly, that I no one has reached out to me regarding that, but I definitely could see how it would be tough to use it. But yeah, I mean, if was it Jamie or who was it that asked the question, Tanya?
It was Caroline, and then she additionally said she was wondering if getting rid of the boxes, it seems it's done in like a table format. So that would be helpful. So if it wasn't in those boxes,
Like the check boxes or like the affirmation boxes, is that the boxes that you're talking about?
the
And like the
I'm gonna
boxes from the matrices, like
each section is in a box that you type inside of.
okay,
So
I,
you'll have
I'm
your
I'm
question.
following. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
Um, yeah, I mean, that's a good point, and Tanya
we
and
could
I
take
can
that.
we can take that to the TA team, and I think we're meeting in a couple weeks before the final MOU guidance webinar, which is I think the end or middle of December. So we can go to the TA team and talk with them and see if there's anything to make it a little more user friendly. Um, but yeah, I understand what you're saying. Rather than putting each section in a box, having it more like I'm assuming you're meaning having it more like the plans, the regional and local plans, where it's like requirement answer, like in a Word format. Okay, yep, that's what I thought you meant. So yeah, we can take that to the TA team and see what they think. Because I'll be honest, I personally think it's easier to read through those plans than the MOU as well. So yeah, we can do that. Was there anything else that I missed,
Yes.
Tanya?
So can you give an example of in-kind versus cash contributions? And this would go back to the budget specifically, and maybe even break that down by infrastructure and service delivery.
I'm gonna let you take that one. I could give a very general answer, but you're the budget queen. I'm gonna let you give a better, more descriptive response.
Okay, so specifically, the first piece that I want to touch whenever we talk about in-kind versus cash contributions, if you are on the one-stop operating budget spreadsheet, if you if you scroll all the way to the left on that spreadsheet, there's a tab that's going to give you a breakdown of what can be used for in-kind for service delivery and infrastructure to specifically show on there. So the first piece that I would touch on first is in-kind staffing is not allowed for infrastructure. So any in-kind for infrastructure would typically be um, equipment or donating space or something along those lines. But there is a complete breakdown that's going to list that as to what can be used as in kind. To break it down from in kind versus cash. So we'll start with the easier one, which would be service delivery. So this is going to be where you can do in kind staffing. So and that's going to be the bottom section of your budget spreadsheet. So if you had $10,000 that needed to be paid for service delivery and you wanted to split that between cash and in kind, what you would do for in kind, if the 5,000 was in kind for staffing, it's going to be best to make a matrix or a calculation that's going to show you what's going to give you that 5,000 for in kind service delivery. So if you had a staff member that was going to be working in the resource center and they were going to work in that resource center 5 hours every month for the entire 12 months, you would then calculate a rate that is a fair share to pay that staff member and to contribute to the actual staffing. So you would break that down for the in kind staffing. Then the remaining of that, which would be the $5,000, would be cash payment. And of course, that's not, physically giving cash. That can be automatic payments, or whenever you receive your invoice breakdown, it's going to have it broken down that 5,000 of it was in-kind staffing, and then your program would then owe an additional $5,000 in cash. So then that would be billed to you. Did that make sense, or did you want me to break that down a little bit further? I'm going to look and see if there's any other questions. Well, okay.
You got a thank
And
you on that one.
Caroline had an additional question. We have a partner who has not received their program year 25 grant. She sent us info either to the state email or maybe through directly to you. And they have indicated they're hesitant to come to the table for program year 26 negotiations. So any suggestions on how they can work through that?
Is this you said this was Caroline?
Correct.
And is this CSEP, I'm assuming? Yeah. So that's another thing that we need to yeah, the CSEP thing is, as everybody kind of knows, with how the federal funding has been, CSEP was one of those programs that there's a lot of uncertainty with that. So that's another thing that we have had kind of initial discussions with the TA team, but we really need to dig in a little deeper on, yeah, how that should take place. But in terms of if a partner isn't, if a required partner isn't sure if they want to be a part of PY 26, I mean, it would kind of be like how TAA was. I don't remember, Caroline, if TAA was one of the programs that you guys didn't have for PY 26 or for PY 25, but if a required partner isn't going to be a part of the isn't going to be at the, yeah, in your local area for that upcoming program year, it would be a matter of, yeah, taking them out of the budget and submitting a waiver, whether it's with the pre-program year planning forms or with the report of outcomes that are submitted. But those would be kind of the two opportunities to put that waiver in, to not have that that partner a part of your local area. But yeah, when it's regarding they'd want to be, but they don't know if they're going to have the funding for it. I know that's when it gets a little trickier. So yeah, like I said, we can go to the TA team with that and discuss that in more detail. And then we can reach out to you, Caroline, on that.
Could I jump in with just a couple extra things, Benton?
Yeah.
So there have been other questions that have come up around CSEP specifically, and I know that they didn't get their funding. So you've got some state funded CSEP partners and federally funded CSEP partners. So the way that we've guided a few of the other local areas, and this is on the TA team for the next meeting as an agenda item. But they did, from our understanding, receive their state and federal funding. The federal funding just came a little bit later. It might have been like that first quarter they didn't receive it. So what was suggested was to go ahead and proceed as the contract was specified within the MOU and the budget, and send the billing to all partners as it was negotiated and agreed upon. Then, if any billing specifically for this program year was to come back and they did not want to pay it, or there was concerns about paying it, then that would be going back to the partners and having that discussion on what are our options on how we can fill this void. And then if there's not a way to fill that void, that's when, if they're not able to make that payment, then it would need to come to the TA team, technical assistance team, to help guide and talk through ways to help specifically with that partner. And then building into program year 26, if it's a required partner that's required to be in that area and they're in that area, then they definitely have to be a part of the negotiations. But as Benton mentioned, they may not be able to contribute 0.25, but that doesn't mean that they may not be able to contribute nothing, because their services are important for that area, to service the seniors and any other thing that's going on in that area, specifically for CSEP, but this could happen with any partner. So then it would be definitely going in and having that conversation within the partners and saying, if you can't contribute 0.25, what can you contribute? And then try to start the discussion there. It's hard to give guidance when, there's a lot of things, a lot of factors in place. So that's one of the reasons that we've paused and haven't taken anything to the TA team to have that discussion from the beginning, because we didn't know what was going to happen. The state team didn't know what was going to happen, but we do have a little bit more of an idea now that the funding has actually been released. I hope that was helpful.
And I looked through, I think that's all of them, and I'm getting ready to send, I think Emma asked for a copy of the draft guidance, so I'm getting ready to send that email to you. So once this is done, you'll get that email from me. And I think actually Kirsten might be sending that out with the slides after the presentation and recording as well. But I think that was all of them. But we still have one more portion of the presentation, so we'll get through that, and then we will open it back up for, again, any final questions, or if there's anything that anyone wants to talk about in more detail, we can. So this final piece is with the timeline for program year 26 activities. So Tanya's on a roll. I'm going to just let her keep going and finish this thing out.
So this slide just shows the timeline for the MOU. It's fairly the same every program year. Everything will start out in December. So this supplemental guidance for program year 26, all of that is going to be released in December of 2025, which is just a few weeks away already. And the pre-program year planning form that Benton discussed, this is due December 31st, and this is just outlining the negotiation process. It's the first time to submit that or note that you might need a waiver, or you might need some additional WIOA training assistance. So it's very important to be as detailed as possible on there, because we will reach out to you and provide any kind of resources or training that you need based on what you put on this form. And then our next big date is April 15th. So this April 15th is when it's expected that negotiations have already started in January and went through April. And this is when you're going to say whether you feel that you're going to be in agreement by May 29th, or you're not going to be in agreement. So if there's a chance that you may not be in agreement, that's when it's important to mark that on that report of outcomes. That way, the state, whenever this is taken to the WIOA technical assistance team, we can dispatch out, and typically that might be KEB, or that might be someone else within the state team that's going to help try to be that person in between that can help get you to that agreement. So that's an important date. And then, of course, the May 29th date, this is when your final MOU, budget, and signatures is required to be submitted to the state. And then based off of all the reviews, and if there's ever any changes that's requested from the TA team, those will be needed to be completed and submitted back for final review by October of 2026. And then right underneath here, you're going to see the WIOA implementation document update page. So those of you that may have never been to that link, that's going to be embedded within this document. So you can go there once these are sent out. And this is the distribution of that final guidance. So that's going to be, there's one more training or one more meeting, I should say. So if there's any recommendations or changes or concerns that you may have, you'll submit those in between now and what date did you want that? December 1st? By December 1st. That way, everything can be reviewed, discussed with the TA team, and then put into the final guidance and completion by December 17th. So if there's anything, for instance, like the template that Caroline brought up, that's going to be something that's going to come from the feedback from this group. And then it's going to be taken to the TA team to see if that's something that could be put in place and updated within the next few weeks to give you guys enough time to get out. So anything at all, submit those in to us and we will add those and follow back up on December 17th. And that's all that we have. So, are there any additional questions that you might have that we didn't touch on over the last hour or so? And then this next page here is going to have our contact information, mine and Benton, and we have the same number. You can reach out to us at KEB.
And I was just going to say, while people are thinking with that, because there was a few questions about the WIOA resource page. Most of the items, like I said, are going to be updated hopefully by the end of this week or next week. There is whenever you're on the resource page, it's one of the top left options. I'm going to actually start sending out emails to get the updated contact information to get that updated here soon to show. And again, if you don't know or if you think it's going to be the same person, then that's fine. You can say, or it's too early to tell on some of these. But I'm going to send an email out, so that's going to be one of the items. So we will get that contact list updated as I get responses and as we get into the process. So that's one of the top left items. And then the guidance document, it's on the top right. It's still going to have the PY25 until we get this guidance finalized. So like Tanya said, through December 1st, reach out to one of us or anyone on the TA team, and we'll discuss it in the December TA team meeting, and then yeah, that way the final guidance presentation on the 17th, we'll have that final guidance ready to go, and then that's when we'll get that one updated. So yeah, a bulk of the stuff will be updated probably next week, but then in the next few weeks, hopefully before the end of the year, we'll kind of have everything else ready to go on that page. And certain things, because I was just in there this morning, certain things might say updated PY19, but that's because nothing's changed since then. I believe the direct linkage form might say whenever you click on it, like the actual document says PY25 updates or PY19 updates, but that's still current. There just hasn't been a change since then. And I think one of the other ones said PY21, but again, there's been no changes since then. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I know that it sounds like there's a lot of people that are kind of new to the resource page, or that maybe haven't been on it for a while. So are there any other questions or comments or anything? Okay, well, Kirsten, I don't know if you have any other housekeeping items to to wrap up with. So we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, yeah, thanks. No, just reiterating that the webinar was recorded and the slides in the recording will be on the Illinois WorkNet website as well as the Illinois Workforce Academy website. And we will have a follow-up email go out tomorrow with that information. So that's it. Thank you everyone for your time today.
Thanks,
Bye, guys.
everyone.